What's up? What's up? Welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome. Perfect. Happy Wednesday, fam. Oh, we're ready for this. We're ready for this. Day two, guys. Day two. I'm very happy that we have some positions in. Good morning. Good morning. Got the TV on right there, but 107,000 BTC. That's pretty awesome. Today, it's kind of like a special day, fam, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why right now. XRP 221. Let's go. Bro, time to go in. All in XRP. Of course. Today, we're going to be listening to Trump speak at the NATO summit. It's really nice. And we're also waiting for the live Jerome Powell today before Congress at the Senate. We don't have a live for this one yet. I don't know why they're taking a while, but I have the links. I'm here on the page, the Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs. So it's going to be so good because here is where Senate Elizabeth Warren, oh my, I'm so ready. I'm so ready. Guys, drop a like. Let us know in the comments how you're feeling. Welcome to Chipper, John 316 in the house. Some of my mods, amazing. Members as well. How you doing? 222. Oh, yes. Let me go ahead and open my BTCC. See how we're cooking or not. I was doing bread and crow. Right now, my positions are 12% down and 6% down. So XRP is the one that is up and other cryptos are down. Of course, I show you my losing trades too. Come on. So FY. I mean, they're not. I mean, they are not close to liquidation, but I mean, they're there, right? But my XRP position. Let me show you. We have one that we open at 204. 204. We opened this one. Let's take a look at how it's doing right now. Perfect. We're not losing money, that I can tell you. We got 88%. 88% positive for XRP position, already making a $300 profit. Not bad at all. Well done. Well done. That's the beauty of trading, you know? That is the beauty of trading. Let XRP go to the moon, and we already added a bunch of XRP. You know, we're adding and just not stopping the addition. So that's exactly what we want to see. What's up, Anthony? The Fed is going to speak. It's going to start at 10 a.m. Eastern. So that's going to be like in 15 minutes. And Trump can start anytime. I'm already watching the live here in the TV. So it's coming soon. Heaven, it's been a while, dude. Welcome. All right. We're waiting for these two guys, Trump and Jerome Powell. Here it is, guys. Yesterday we watched before the US House. Today before the US Senate. Bro, this Senate is gonna be so powerful. Super powerful, bro. Mm-mm-mm-mm. We're just waiting for the live feed here. Um, I don't have the YouTube link. I don't know if it's gonna be a YouTube link or their page because it that directs to a website. This directs to YouTube, which is much better. Hmm. Pump it up, 100%, buddy. As soon as we're closing in on $3, another world event will happen. We're all already tired of things happening and not being able to get past $3. I get it, bro. I get it. Bitcoin is doing well, 100%, bro. Right now, our positions. Hey, Brett is back in the green. Don't you know? Pump it up. Let's go, baby. Come on, Brett. 108,000 Bitcoin. Let's go. BTC here on BTCC is doing phenomenal today. Guys, that is why you buy the dip, right? That is why you do it. Hopefully, no more nothing burgers. I know, right? I know. All right. Both XRP, Bitcoin are doing pretty nice today. And they don't really give us any signal, and it's about to start in like 10 minutes. So, not sure where they want us to watch that, but I want to watch it so bad. And nothing is happening here so far. Live, nothing's happening. Waiting on that event too. We're waiting and waiting and waiting for those events to come. I hope Judge Torres doesn't wipe out this pump. She's gonna do something this week. Haven't seen that. But if she is good, I mean, it's about time. Cheaper. What's up, Art? Good to have you, buddy. Welcome. Why are we pumping Oscar? Why not? So much happening here in crypto that it's time for us to really get our the next leg up. So many reasons why we should be pumping. The only reason we were dumping, guys, is because of the war, right? But now, are they really talking about the war today? It happened on Saturday. It was. It's not a war. It was a strike, right? Iran. We don't hear him send more missiles, right? Which is good. The world is changing very rapidly. Now they're talking about the New York race and Trump NATO. He's obviously going to say a few things about the war and Iran. So we want to listen. We really want to listen every single thing, bro. As always, guys, links down below and links on the top of the chat. Start trading on BTCC now, fam, because what can I tell you guys? That fear is really what makes a lot of people tons of money, guys. It's true. It is true. Put this one right here. What's up, Primo? Good to have you, buddy. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. U.S. Senate Committee on Banking. Let's take a look if we find something here. Ooh, this might be the one. This might be the one. Oh, this one. Yeah, Maybe this one. Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affair Committee. Yeah. This one. It has to be this one. Yeah, that's where Elizabeth Warren is. Yeah, it's this one. This was 3 years ago. Yeah, I found it. It has to be this page. There's nothing live right now. They don't really use it a lot. I don't know why. Did they change that to maybe this one? Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. They're using this one now. Yeah, they're using this one. Okay, so it has to come here. Right here. Found the YouTube page. Perfect. So we'll have it. We'll have Trump. Awesome. Have everybody here. Give us some really good news, Oscar. We're alive, buddy. We are alive. That's enough. You're alive. You got opportunity to be better and to live and enjoy. So many people don't have that gift, but we do. So enjoy. You only live once. God is good. Summer coming up. What's up, Mr. Jats? Good to have you, buddy. Welcome. Guys, as soon as you're coming in, drop a like, smash your like button. That helps us tons so more people come and enjoy. Let's do this. Little by little. All the time. Even when we don't understand, it happens. Think we're gonna see a rate cut in July? No. Based on what he's speaking, based on what he's saying, no. But you never know. Hopefully, yes. Hopefully, yes. I hope. Are they gonna go live or what? Who is in charge? Are they still waiting for Trump? He's gonna come out anytime now. I mean, guys, what do we want to watch? What do we want to see? Because I wanna listen to the two of them. Who do you want to listen right now? Let's make a poll. Who should we listen first? I mean, obviously, we're gonna end up listening Powell later because Trump is gonna be maybe an hour or less. Want to listen to Trump or you want to listen to Powell? Question, because I think I already know the answer. I think I already know the answer. Don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up, and don't you know? Pump it up. I want to listen to Pepe. Labo, that was a scam. Be careful. I don't send emails. Be very careful. I am so pissed that there's so many scammers, impersonators, guys. Be super careful, man. I'm so mad, that so many people lose money because they pretend to be me and oh no. There's nothing we can do about it. Bad people will do bad things all the time, sadly. Sadly. Just be careful, never click on any links. Just be careful, man. I have 25 fakes on my ex. No way. 25? Crazy. 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Where's the live? Come on, baby. Go live. Don't you know? Pump it up. We're waiting. I was a millionaire in January. My account is back to 730,000. I hate being poor. Jason, what's up, buddy? Welcome. August in the house. So Jeff Bezos is getting married. Mr. Bezos. Good for him. Hey, he's there. Come on.
Secretary General Mark Rutte, who's been terrific. He's been a friend of mine. Used to be right here running this wonderful country. Now he's the NATO Secretary General. He's doing a fantastic job. And the Prime Minister, we appreciate everything you've done. And as you know, last weekend, the United States successfully carried out a massive precision strike on Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities, and it was very, very successful. It was called obliteration. No other military on earth could have done it, and now this incredible exercise of American strength has paved the way for peace with a historic ceasefire agreement late Monday, and we call it the 12-day war. Spoke to a few people. I guess that just sounded like the right name. It was a 12-day war. And we think it's over. I don't think they're going to be going back at each other. I don't think so. Not only have we dealt decisively with the critical threat of Iran's nuclear program, which was what I wanted. I said, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I've said that for 15 years, long before I decided to do the political thing. But we've also reasserted the credibility of American deterrence, which is like no other. The people at NATO said there's never been anything. You know, I rebuilt the entire military during my first term. And we have a great military. We have great generals. Got to know the good ones and the bad ones. We kept the good ones. Over the past 2 days, I was honored to participate in the NATO leaders meeting and also had extremely good individual discussions with the King and the Queen, Secretary General Rutte, and the Prime Minister. Great discussions. Very knowledgeable people. Major focus of our conversations at the summit was the need for other NATO members to take up the burden of the defense of Europe, and that included the financial burden. As you know, it was 2%, and we got it up to 5%. And they said, a couple of them came up to me. One in particular said, "Sir, we've been trying to get it up to 3%.
Let's see if this one is better.
We haven't been able." And they said, a couple of them came up to me. One in particular said, "Sir, we've been trying to get it up to 3% for 20 years, and we haven't been able." And you got to. Most of them, I guess almost all of them, are going to be contributing now 5%, a number that
it's
people are
the
surprised at, but you need it today.
signal, not
The
me.
United States accounts for 2/3 of all NATO defense spending, and since I began pushing for additional commitments in 2017, believe it or not, our allies have increased spending by $700 billion. I said to people, you don't have any money, and a lot of them weren't paying. And so I started the process, and I picked it up as soon as I got back, which is 6 months ago. And following my election last November, almost all have accelerated plans to reach the 2%, 3%, 4%, and then ultimately, very quickly, 5%. And all of this is going to be done very quickly, almost immediately. You probably know this as well as I do. I'm sure they've been talking about it. It's really been a big focus. In a very historic milestone this week, the NATO allies committed to dramatically increase their defense spending to that 5% of GDP, something that no one really thought possible. And they said, "You did it, sir, you did it." Well, I don't know if I did it, but I think I did. This will be known as the Hague Defense Commitment, which is pretty good, pretty appropriate. When the Allies reach this number, it will add more than $1 trillion a year. Think of that, $1 trillion per year to our common defense. And this is a monument really to victory, but it's a monumental win for the United States because we were carrying much more than our fair share. It was quite unfair, actually. But this is a big win for Europe and for actually Western civilization. For years, past administrations failed to get most allies to contribute even the 2%. I remember when I came here, we had 4 countries that were up to 2%, and I remember Poland was there. A couple of them were there, and but most of them were. We had 28 at the time. As you know, it's increased a little bit, and they've agreed now to more than double their budgets in all cases. And Europe stepping up to take more responsibility for its security will help prevent future disasters like the horrible situation with Russia and Ukraine, and hopefully we're going to get that solved. Last week they lost 7,000 soldiers, mostly soldiers, but they're also getting hit in Kiev. They're getting hit in some of the towns also. And that means life. Life is disappearing also in the cities and towns. Should have never happened, would have never happened if I was president. I said it 1,000 times. And it never did happen. It's never even thought about. But it's vital that this additional money be spent on very serious military hardware, not bureaucracy. And hopefully that hardware is going to be made in America because we have the best hardware in the world. You saw that where 14 missiles were shot at us the other day. And they were very nice. They gave us warning. They said, we're going to shoot them. Is 1 o'clock okay? They said, it's fine. And everybody was emptied off the base, so they couldn't get hurt except for the gunners. They call them the gunners. And out of 14 high-end missiles that were shot at the base in Qatar, all 14, as you know, were shot down by our equipment. Amazing stuff. Amazing that they can do. It's like shooting a bullet with a bullet. It's the same thing if you think about it. 14 out of 14, and they weren't even that surprised. I said, do you do that well often? They say, we pretty much do, sir. The Ukraine crisis has also highlighted the urgency of rebuilding our defense industrial base, both in the United States and among the allied nations. We cannot afford adversaries for critical minerals. And as you know, we made a deal with Ukraine to take a vast amount of the land they have for minerals. We need it. And once again, I want to thank all of the people in the Netherlands, incredible people. It's a great place. And all of the NATO allies for the tremendous summit that we just had. A letter just came in, and a statement came in from the Atomic Energy Commission of Israel. And I just wanted, this is an official letter, and they're very serious people, as you know. The devastating U.S. strike on Fordo destroyed the site's critical infrastructure and rendered the enrichment facility totally inoperable. It was devastated. We assess that the American strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities has set back Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons for many years to come. This achievement can continue indefinitely if Iran does not get access to nuclear material, which it won't. It's so sad that that whole thing had to go. But I just want to thank our pilots. You know, they were maligned and treated very bad, demeaned by fake news CNN, which is back there, believe it or not, wasting time, nobody's watching them, so they're just wasting a lot of time, wasting my time. And the New York Times, they put out a story that, well, maybe they were hit, but it wasn't bad. Well, it was so bad that they ended the war. It ended the war. Somebody said in a certain way, you know, that it was so devastating, actually. If you look at Hiroshima, if you look at Nagasaki, you know, that ended a war too. This ended a war in a different way, but it was so devastating. Also, they have, out of Dubai, just came that Iran's foreign ministry spokesman, this is Iran's foreign ministry, says its nuclear installations were very badly damaged by the American strike. So what bothered me about these reports with fake reports put out by the New York Times, failing, I call it the failing New York Times because it's doing terribly. Without me, it would be doing no business at all. But, and by fake news, CNN and MSDNC, all of these terrible people, you know, they have no credibility. You know, when I started, they were at 94% credibility, the media. Now it's at 16%. And I'm very proud of it because I've exposed it for what it is. But when I saw them starting to question the caliber of the attack, was it bad? Well, it was really bad. It was devastating. They were obliterated. In fact, you can't get into the tunnels. They just put that over. That just came out. They can't, there's nothing, there's no way you can even get down. The whole thing is collapsed in a disaster. And I think all of the nuclear stuff is down there because it's very hard to remove. And we did it very quickly. When they heard we were coming, it was, you know, you can't move it. It's very hard, very dangerous, actually, to move to. And they also knew we were coming, so I don't think too many people want to be down there knowing we're coming. With the bunker busters, as we call them, we're the only ones that have them. We have the best equipment, best nuclear equipment, and we have the best equipment in the world. And by the way, we can't forget our submarine, which was out there, submarines actually, but submarine was out there. We shot 30 rockets into an area, every single one of them. I think it was almost 400 miles away, I think, Pete, right? 400? And long. It was in the ocean, long ways away. And we shot a total of 30. Every single one of them hit within 9 inches from where it was supposed to be. It took out a lot because we didn't do just 4, though. We did 2 others in addition, which hadn't been completely destroyed. So we hit them with a submarine from hundreds of miles away. Amazing, just amazing equipment. Greatest submarines in the world. Nobody's even close. They're 20 years behind us when it comes to submarine technology. So that's one, and the other was from the Atomic Energy Commission, and they have about 3 or 4 of them now coming in from atomic energy commissions from various places. But the one that we have that just came out, we released it a little while ago, was from the Israeli Atomic Energy Commission, but numerous of them are getting to see the site, and the site has been demolished. And again, we had these brave patriots, these incredible flyers, these people that can fly a plane better than anybody can fly a plane, going into very hostile territory, flying into the territory that has got more missiles and things pointed at it. But it was very stealth. They didn't get to see it. It was dark. That's the amazing thing about the shots. They hit the shots perfectly, and yet it was dead dark. There was no moon. There was no light. It was virtually moonless. It was very dark, and the shots were hit perfectly. But when they get demeaned, and they were very upset about it because they knew how strong it would be. Back in Missouri, the pilots flew about 36 hours, 2 ways, far distance, and in those incredible B-2s. And we then had the F-22s, and we had the F-35s, and we had other planes, and we had, I think, a total of 52 tankers. That means the big tankers, because the refueling was a lot for all of the different planes that we sent. Incredible operation, and I have to say, General Raisin Cain was incredible. That's why he beat ISIS, and we beat ISIS in a matter of weeks. I was told it would take 4 to 5 years. We did it in a few weeks. And he was great. That's why he's the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff right now, because I had a very good experience with him. He knocked out ISIS in a period of literally a few weeks. Amazing. And it was supposed to take a few years, 5 years to be exact. So we had a great victory there, and we then came here, and I think we had a great victory here. But this is an ongoing project. This is the safety of Europe, the safety of the world. And they've raised it from 2% to 5%, something which nobody, and you're talking about over $1 trillion a year. So we're talking about a lot of money from coming in from countries that were not paying nearly enough to be effective. So I have, as you know, Marco Rubio with me, and Pete Hegseth, Secretary of State and Secretary of War. Should we say Secretary? You know, it used to be called Secretary of War. Maybe for a couple of weeks we'll call it that. Because we feel like warriors. Used to be called Secretary of War. In fact, if you look at the old building next to the White House, you can see where it used to be Secretary of War. Then we became politically correct, and they called it Secretary of Defense. I don't know, maybe we'll have to start thinking about changing it, but we feel that way. Do we have any questions, please?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's a lot of questions.
Here we go.
Who's a nice person? Oh, you're not a nice person, but I'll let you ask one. Go ahead. What's he going to ask? He is not nice at all. I know him well.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time before flying home. You just said you believe the conflict between Israel and Iran is over. What makes you so confident it is? And what do you do if it isn't?
Because I dealt with both, and they're both tired, exhausted. They fought very, very hard and very viciously, very violently, and they were both satisfied to go home and get out. And can it start again? I guess someday it can. It could maybe start soon. I think a big telltale sign was when, as you know, Iran somewhat, by not much, violated the ceasefire. And Israel had the planes going out that morning, and there were a lot of them, 52 of them. And I said, you got to get them back. And they brought them back. They didn't do anything. They brought them back. It was very good. I thought it was amazing, actually. They have fought a hell of a war. They fought very hard. I think the war ended, actually, when we hit the various nuclear sites with the planes. And I just hope you people can give these pilots, these are the best pilots in the world. They're the best shots in the world. They call them shots. That's what they are. And wait a minute. And I just hope you can give them the respect they deserve, because they came home to fake news. And like, oh, gee, there was hardly any damage. The things are decimated. So, but I think, no, I think they're very much finished. I think Israel's going to get back to doing what they do, and I think that Iran's going to get back. You know, Iran has a huge advantage. They have great oil, and they can do things. I don't see them getting back involved in the nuclear business anymore. I think they've had it. They've been at it for 20 years, and I don't see that happening either. Now, if it does, we're always there. It won't be me. It'll be somebody else, but we're there. We'll have to do something about it. Yes, please, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, Caitlin
fake
Collins.
news, CNN? Oh, yeah, here we go. Wait till you hear this question. You should really say how great our soldiers and our warriors are.
I think everyone appreciates our soldiers and our warriors. I do have two questions for you, Mr. President. You just cited Israeli intelligence on these attacks. Earlier, you said U.S. intelligence was inconclusive. Are you relying on Israeli intelligence for your assessment of the impact of the strikes?
No, this is also, Iran made the statement. And it's also, if you read the document that was given, that Pete can talk about if you'd like, the document said it could be very severe damage, but they didn't take that. They said it could be limited or it could be very severe. They really didn't know, other than to say it could be limited or it could be very, very severe. And you didn't choose to put that because it was very early after. Since then, we've collected additional intelligence. We've also spoken to people who have seen the site, and the site is obliterated. And we think everything nuclear is down there. They didn't take it out. Okay, question? Please, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, blue dress.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Yesterday, you said China can now continue to purchase oil from Iran.
Yeah.
Are you giving up on your maximum pressure campaign? Because
With
there's
who?
sanctions right now.
With who?
On Iran?
No, look, they just had a war. The war was fought. They fought it bravely. I'm not giving up. They're in the oil business. I mean, I could stop it if I wanted. I could sell China the oil myself. I don't want to do that. They're going to need money to put that country back into shape. We want to see that happen. Would it? No, if they're going to sell oil, they're going to sell oil. We're not taking over the oil. We could have, you know. I used to say with Iraq, keep the oil. I could say it here, too. We could have kept the oil. No, China is going to want to buy oil. They can buy it from us. They can buy it from other people. But you're going to have to put that country back into shape. It desperately needs money. Yeah. Yeah, please. Here we go. I'm picking the beauties today. Go ahead.
Mr. President, Secretary General Rutte has described President Putin as an adversary, a threat, an enemy. Do you view him the same way? And in addition to that, you mentioned General Kane, your chief of staff, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
General Kane.
Yes, he has said that Mr. Putin has territorial ambitions beyond Ukraine. Do you view that in the same way?
Possible. I mean, it's possible. I know one thing, he'd like to settle. He'd like to get out of this thing. It's a mess for him. He called the other day. He said, can I help you with Iran? I said, no, you can help me with Russia. Because, in the last few weeks, we took care of India and Pakistan, Kosovo, Serbia. I think on Friday we have coming in, the Congo is coming in, and Rwanda is coming in. That was a vicious war that went on, a machete war, heads chopped off all over Africa. They're coming in. We did 2 others in addition to that. Nobody's ever done anything like this. No, I consider him a person that's, I think, been misguided. I'm very surprised, actually. I thought we would have had that settled easy. I've settled 4 of them in the meantime. But he did call up, and he said, he's close to Iran. He'd like to help us get a settlement. I said, no, you help me get a settlement with Russia. And I think we're going to be doing that, too. Yeah, please. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. You've made clear your position on what impact the strikes had. I wanted to ask you what is next with Iran. For instance, is there any indication from U.S. intelligence that Iran was able to move any material, including
No, just the
uranium?
opposite. We think we hit them so hard and so fast they didn't get to move. And if you knew about that material, it's very hard and very dangerous to move. It's called, in many people, they call it dust, but it's very, very heavy. It's very, very hard to move. And they were way down. They're 30 stories down. They're literally 30, 35 stories down underground.
You think you got it all?
Oh, yeah, we think we got it. We think it's covered with granite, concrete, and steel.
Can I ask you, are you interested in restarting negotiations with Iran? And if so, have they reciprocated?
So
Or is
our
this sort of
people,
settled?
Marco could answer this, but our people are not, I'm not. The way I look at it, they fought, the war's done, and, I could get a statement that they're not going to go nuclear. We're probably going to ask for that, but they're not going to be doing it. But they're not going to be doing it anyway. They've had it. They've had it. Now, maybe someday in the future we'll want that. But I've asked Marco, do you want to draw, I just asked him the question as we were walking on the stage, do you want to draw up a little agreement for them to sign? Because I think we can get them to sign it. I don't think it's necessary. Marco, do you want to talk about that, please?
Well, Mr. President, I think President Trump has shown a willingness to meet and talk to anybody in the world who's interested in peace. I don't know of any president that's been as willing as he has to meet with anyone and talk about peace. We'd love to have peaceful relations with any country in the world. And so obviously that'll depend on Iran's willingness not just to engage in peace, but to negotiate directly with the United States, not through some third country or fourth country process. But I know of no president, probably in our modern history, that's sought peace more than President Trump has.
Sounds like the door is open, but you're in no rush. Is that right? Sounds like the door is open, but
I'll tell you what, look, we're going to talk to them next week with Iran. We may sign an agreement. I don't know. To me, I don't think it's that necessary. I mean, they had a war, they fought. Now they're going back to their world. I don't care if I have an agreement or not. The only thing we'd be asking for is what we were asking for before about we want no nuclear, but we destroyed the nuclear. In other words, that's destroyed. I said, Iran will not have nuclear. Well, we blew it up. It's blown up to kingdom come. And so I don't feel very strongly about it. If we got a document, it wouldn't be bad. We're going to meet with them, actually. We're going to meet with them. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yes. Mr. President, Netherlands TV, thank you for visiting our country.
Good.
As I
Thank you.
understood, I, of course, would like to know how you slept last night at the House of the King.
Oh, I slept beautifully.
But probably a more serious question. I think you just had a meeting with President Zelensky. Did you discuss any ceasefire in this Russo-Ukrainian?
No, I wanted to know how he's doing. He was very nice, actually. We had little rough times sometimes. He was couldn't have been nicer. I think he'd like to see an end to this. I do. I think what I took from the meeting couldn't have been nicer, actually. But I took from the meeting that he'd like to see it end. I think it's a great time to end it. I'm going to speak to Vladimir Putin and see if we can get it ended. But look, these are brave people. They're fighting these wars all over the place. Last week, they had, I guess, close to 7,000 young soldiers, Russian and Ukrainian soldiers were killed,
And this is
7,000
great.
in 1 week. It's crazy. It's crazy. So I'll be speaking to Putin. No, I had a good meeting with Zelensky, and I had a lot of good meetings. We had a lot of good meetings with a lot of people, a lot of great leaders. But he's fighting a brave battle. It's a tough battle. Yeah. Go ahead, white dress.
Thank you. Ida Hallikainen from Finland, Ilta-Sanomat.
Good.
You have played golf with President Alexander Stubb. How do you see Finland as a NATO ally and partner, and how would you describe your relationship with our president?
Well, he's a very good golfer, okay? In fact, he was on his college golf team. He went to a good college in the South, as you know, a very good college, and he was a good golfer. We had a good time. I think my relationship's great. I want to buy icebreakers. You know, you're very good at icebreakers. And I actually made him an offer. I didn't go to Congress. They'll try and impeach me for this. But there's an old, it's not old, it's fairly new, but it's used icebreaker. And I offered him about 1/3 of what he asked for. But we're negotiating. We need icebreakers in the U.S. And if we can get some inexpensively, I'd like to do that. Actually, they'll fix it up, make it good. Also, we may buy some icebreakers. You know, you're the king of icebreakers, that particular country. They make them good. They make them really good, and they know what they're doing. And so we're negotiating with them for about 15 different icebreakers. But one of them is available now. It's old, and it's old. It's like 5-6 years old. And we're trying to buy it. I'm trying to make a good deal. It's all I do my whole life. My whole life, that's all I do is make deals. Yeah, please. Go ahead. Sir, go ahead.
Yeah, a question for NewsHour, Dutch TV. First of all, on Article 5, on your way here, you spoke about the commitment of the U.S. to Article 5, saying, I'll give you my definition once we're here. Yeah. What is your definition, and may the U.S. commitment to Article 5 change in case some of the NATO members do not reach the threshold that was discussed today? My second question is following up on a colleague on Iran. What intel reports do say that everything over there was obliterated? Yeah, well, there are numerous of those reports, and they're coming out fast and furious. But the most respected ones we've already seen. And I will say that on a very confidential basis, they're looking at the reports, like numerous reports, and including people going to the site and checking the site. And they're going to be having, I guess you're going to be having over the next couple of days a full, you're going to encapsulate it. But no, the site was obliterated, just like I said it was, and just like the pilots should be given credit for. As far as Article 5, look, when I came here because it was something I'm supposed to be doing, but I left here a little bit differently. I said, I watched the heads of these countries get up, and the love and the passion that they showed for their country was unbelievable. I've never seen quite anything like it. They want to protect their country, and they need the United States. And without the United States, it's not going to be the same. And you can ask Mark, or you can ask any of the people that were there. It was really moving to see it. They love their country. They were so respectful of me because I'm the head of the United States. And I made, the King of Saudi Arabia, when I was in the Middle East, so I was in Qatar for a different reason, not a reason to get shot at. We were in there for economic development reasons, Qatar, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. All three leaders of those countries, and we took back $5.1 trillion into the United States. All three leaders said, you're presiding over the hottest country in the world. The United States right now is the hottest, everybody wants to be there, everybody wants a piece of it. He said, a year ago, your country was dead. You had a deadhead running it. You had a country that was dead, and it was dead. You had people pouring through the borders. You had inflation. You had everything. He said, you've made it in 5 months at that time. You've made it the hottest country. This is the hottest country in the world. The United States right now is the hottest country in the world. And when I was around that table, it was a nice group of people, many of whom I knew from previous,
when I saw the passion they had for the country, and almost everyone, and you probably have the tapes, it was very public, but almost every one of them said, thank God for the United States. Without the United States, they couldn't really have NATO. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. It will in the future because now they're paying much more money, but it wouldn't work. It was great. And I left here differently. I left here saying that these people really love their countries. It's not a ripoff, and we're here to help them protect their country. Okay, we'll do one or two more.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah.
A question on Spain. Are you satisfied with today?
Oh, I think Spain's terrible what they've done. No, I do. They're the only country that won't pay the full up. They want to stay at 2%. I think it's terrible. And, you know, they're doing very well. The economy is very well. And that economy could be blown right out of the water with something bad happening. You know, Spain is the only country that... Are you from Spain?
Yeah.
Good, congratulations. You're the only country that is not paying. I don't know what the problem is. I think it's too bad. So we'll make it up. You know what we're going to do? We're negotiating with Spain on a trade deal. We're going to make them pay twice as much. And I'm actually serious about that. We're going to make Spain... I like Spain. I have so many people from Spain that it's a great place and they're great people. But Spain is the only country out of all of the countries that refuses to pay. And, you know, so they want a little bit of a free ride. But they'll have to pay it back to us on trade because I'm not going to let that happen. It's unfair. It's unfair to NATO. All right, sir, please. Go ahead, right in the back. Yeah, you, tall one. The tall man.
Mr. President, Johannes Petra from Austrian National Television.
How are you?
You once said that you would end the Ukraine war in 24 hours. You later said that sarcastically.
Well, of course it was sarcastic.
But you've now been in office for 5 months and 5 days. Why have you not been able to end the Ukraine war?
Because it's more difficult than people would have any idea. Vladimir Putin has been more difficult. Frankly, I had some problems with Zelensky. You may have read about him. And it's been more difficult than other wars. I mean, look, we just ended a war in 12 days that was simmering for 30 years, frankly. We ended Rwanda and the Congo. It's coming to sign the documents. We've already signed basic documents, but they're coming, I think, to the White House on Friday. We ended Serbia was going to go at it. But maybe the most important of all, India and Pakistan. And that wasn't whether or not they may someday have nukes like we're talking about in the Middle East, like we're talking about with Israel and Iran. This is they have nuclear weapons. I ended that with a series of phone calls on trade. I said, look, if you're going to go fighting each other, it was getting very bad. You know how bad that last attack was. It was really bad. If you're going to go fighting each other, we're not doing any trade deal. No, 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 you have to do a trade deal. I said, we're not doing any trade deal. And in fact, I had the general, who was very impressive. The general from Pakistan was in my office last week. You know, Prime Minister Modi is a great friend of mine. He's a great gentleman. He's a great man. And I got them to reason. I said, we're not doing a trade deal if you're going to fight. And if you're going to fight each other, we're not doing a trade deal. And you know what? They said, no, I want to do the trade deal. We stopped the nuclear war. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jeff. Here's another beauty, Jeff. He's a beauty, all right. Go ahead.
Mr. President, to follow up on Ukraine, will the United States contribute any more money to Ukraine's defense this year to the $5 billion that allies are giving? And one question, you had another meeting with the Dutch opposition leader, Mr. Wilders. Can you tell us about that meeting? And are you upset about his anti-Muslim stance?
I'm not upset about it. It's just his view. He's unhappy with the way things are going in this country and various countries. He was an opposition leader. And I was asked to meet with the opposition leader by the people that are running. I think they have some deal where if you have a meeting, you're supposed to meet with an opposition leader. I said, that's strange. We don't do that. But I met with I didn't know him. He seemed like a very nice guy, but he's in opposition to the current people, and that was set up by the current people. So I assume when I met with the prime minister, you're supposed to meet with the opposition. We'll have to try that sometime in our country. Let's not do it. But I thought he was very good. As far as money going, we'll see what happens. There's a lot of spirit. Look, Vladimir Putin really has to end that war. People are dying at levels that people haven't seen before for a long time. Go ahead. Go ahead. White shirt. Oh, she's all excited.
So, BBC News Ukrainian. I would
Where are
like
you
to ask
from?
I'm from Ukraine.
Oh,
So my
wow.
question to you is whether or not the US is ready to sell anti-air missile systems Patriot to Ukraine. We know that Russia has been pounding Ukraine really heavily right now.
Are you
and,
living yourself now in Ukraine?
my husband is there.
Wow.
and-
I can see you very, it's amazing.
And me with the kids, I'm in Warsaw actually, because he wanted me to be.
Is your husband a soldier? No?
He's,
He's there now?
yeah,
Wow. That's rough stuff, right? That's tough. And you're living here?
in Warsaw.
And you're a reporter?
I am.
Good. So let me just tell you, they do want to have the missiles, okay, as they call them, the Patriots. And we're going to see if we can make some available, They're very hard to get. We need them too. We were supplying them to Israel, and they're very effective, 100% effective. Hard to believe how effective. And they do want that more than any other thing, as you probably know. That's a very good question, and I wish you a lot of luck. I mean, I can see it's very upsetting to you. So say hello to your husband, okay? Thank you. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. You were criticizing
Where are you from?
Bloomberg News.
Oh, Bloomberg. That's wonderful.
You were criticizing the Federal Reserve Chair before coming to this
I
summit.
think he's terrible.
I was wondering if you've begun interviewing different candidates for the Fed pick.
Yeah, I know within
Good
3 or
one.
4 people who are going to pick. I mean, he goes out pretty soon, fortunately, because I think he's terrible. We have no inflation. We have a tremendous economy. Hundreds of billions of dollars of tariff money is pouring in. Factories are being built because they don't want to pay the tariffs, so they're building them all over the country. I think we're close to $15 trillion. I told you $5.1 trillion from the Middle East alone, but of investment money coming in. There's never been anything like that in the history of our country. But we have no inflation. And we have borrowing because Biden, stupidly, they did short-term debt. So we have borrowing coming up. And, we'll go 10 years, maybe longer, maybe shorter, but we'll go a long period of time when we do the debt. And because of him, because of this guy, we will have to pay for years. We'll be paying for him. And I said to him, listen, there's no inflation. He says, but maybe there'll be some. That's true. I said, if there is some, what you do is raise the rate. I'm okay with that. You raise the rate in 2 years from now or in a year from now. But because the rate's high, we have to pay more for debt. It's pretty equal. In other words, if it's 4%, it's 4%. If you drop it a point, you'll pay 3%. So it's fairly equal, not necessarily, but fairly equal. So we're going to end up paying maybe 2 points or 3 points more. 3 points would be about $900 billion a year because of this very average mentally person. He's an average mentally person. I'd say low in terms of what he does, low. Low IQ for what he does, okay? Wait, so instead of paying $900 billion, we don't want to pay 900 just because he doesn't want to lower the rate. I said, if there's inflation in 2 years or 3 years or 1 year from now, you raise the rate and you take care of the inflation, among other things. But he's probably a very political guy, I guess. I don't know. I think he's a very stupid person, actually. All right, one more. Let's go. How about you? Go ahead.
Oh, boy.
She looks so happy and everything.
Thank you.
That's why I
I'm
picked
from
her.
Spain too. I'm Ana Buch from La Vanguardia. I wanted to know if
You're where from?
Spain too.
Ah.
I wanted to know if you want to.
That's the Spain corner right there. Shouldn't have said that. That's okay. I do like Spain, by the way. I think it's unfair that they're not paying, but go ahead.
Are you going to negotiate directly with Spain about?
I'm going to negotiate directly with Spain. I'm going to do it myself. They're going to pay. They'll pay more money this way. You should tell them to go back and pay. You're a reporter? You tell them to go back. They ought to join all of those countries that are paying 5%. Spain's going to be just about the only one that's not. They were the most hostile toward doing it. It just doesn't make sense to me. Okay. All right, Kelly, go ahead. Here we go. There's another one.
Hello, sir. Thank you
We
very much.
got them all today.
Okay. So, Mr. President, you talked about expecting some on-the-ground assessments at Fordo and other
Yeah.
sites.
Now here-
Is that
here again.
Israeli and U.S.?
It's been obliterated, Kelly. It's
What is your message
obliterated.
then, sir, to the intelligence community when they present reports? You're not disputing the DIA report. You're just
They presented a
exists.
report that wasn't finished. We're talking about something that took place 3 days ago.
I understand that's
The report was done
assessment. So
2
what
days
is
ago.
your-
Wait a minute.
Yes.
They didn't see it. All they can do is take a guess. Now, if you take a look at the pictures, if you take a look how it's all blackened, you know the fire and brimstone is all underground because it's granite and it's all underground. You don't show it. But even there, with all of that being said, the whole area for 75 yards around the hole where it hit is black with fire. The group that's run by this gentleman, in fact, you may want to talk about it for a second because we're going to issue a report. And I think it's not even a very exciting report at this point. It's been obliterated, totally obliterated. And they did a report, but it was like, if you look at the dates, it's just a few days after it
Understood,
happened.
sir.
So they didn't see it. They said it may be very severe. Go
Understood.
ahead.
Do you have a message for the intelligence community, though, in terms of unvarnished information getting to you, that it's not...
I don't really have a message. I would say issue the report when you know what happened. I wouldn't say that it could be severe or maybe not. They use the word severe. It could be severe or maybe it's not.
And
So people like you picked up and said, oh, it's not severe.
We're just
No,
looking for
the report was not a complete report. Yeah, the message was probably wait till you know the answer before you...
And,
Go
sir,
ahead.
did you not have a public component to your Zelensky meeting for a tactical reason with President Putin?
Let him answer this.
Hello, Mr. Secretary.
Yeah. There's a reason the president calls out fake news for what it is. These pilots, these refuelers, these fighters, these air defenders, the skill and the courage it took to go into enemy territory flying 36 hours on behalf of the American people and the world to take out a nuclear program is beyond what anyone in this audience can fathom. And then the instinct of CNN, the instinct of the New York Times is to try to find a way to spin it for their own political reasons to try to hurt President Trump or our country. They don't care what the troops think. They don't care what the world thinks. They want to spin it to try to make him look bad based on a leak. Of course, we've all seen plenty of leakers. And what do leakers do? They have agendas. And what do? Do they share the whole information or just the part that they want to introduce? And when they introduce that preliminary report that's deemed to be a low assessment, you know what a low assessment means? Low confidence in the data in that report. And why is there low confidence? Because all of the evidence of what was just bombed by 12 30,000-pound bombs is buried under a mountain, devastated and obliterated. So if you want to make an assessment of what happened at Fordo, you better get a big shovel and go really deep, because Iran's nuclear program is obliterated. And somebody somewhere is trying to leak something to say, oh, with low confidence, we think maybe it's moderate. Those that dropped the bombs precisely in the right place know exactly what happened when that exploded. And you know who else knows? Iran. That's why they came to the table right away, because their nuclear capabilities have been set back beyond what they thought were possible because of the courage of a commander-in-chief who led our troops, despite what the fake news wants to say.
But you're not disputing the report said what it said, even though it was initial.
The report said what it said, and it was fine. It was severe, they think, but they had no idea. They shouldn't have issued a report until they did. But we've gotten the information. I think Pete said it better than you can say it. And, you know, you should be proud, you, especially you, should be proud of those pilots, and you shouldn't be trying to demean them.
No, there's
those pilots flew at great risk, a big chance that they'd never come back home and see their husbands or their wives. Let me just tell you, you and NBC, fake news, which is one of the worst, and CNN, New York Times, are all bad. They're sick. There's something wrong with them. But you know what? You should be praising those people instead of trying to find some. By getting me, by trying to go and get me, you're hurting those people. They were devastated. You know, I got a call from Missouri, great state, that I won 3 times by a lot. And I got a call that the pilots and the people on the plane were devastated because they were trying to minimize the attack. And they all said it was hit. but we don't think it was really maybe hit that badly. And they were devastated. They put their lives on the line, and then they have, and I'm not referring to you, but real scum come out and write reports that are as negative as they could possibly be. It should be the opposite. You should make them heroes and heroines. You should make them really people that they were so devastated when they heard this news. And you know what they said? One of them, I spoke to one of them, said, "Sir, we hit the site. It was perfect. It was dead on." Because they don't understand fake news, because they have a normal life, except they have to fly very big, very fast planes. But it's a shame. You should be making them heroes. All right, in the back. Go ahead, back, white, yeah.
Oh, boy.
White jacket, yeah. Go ahead, give my mic. Hello.
Deborah Haynes from Sky News.
Good.
Mark Rutte, the NATO chief, who is your friend, he called you daddy earlier. Do you regard your NATO allies as kind of children?
No, he likes me. I think he likes me. If he doesn't, I'll let you know. I'll come back and I'll hit him hard, okay? He did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy.
Do you regard your NATO allies, though, as kind of like children, and they're obviously listening to you and they're spending more, and you're obviously appreciative of that, but do you hope that actually they're going to be able to defend themselves, defend Europe on their own?
I think they need help a little bit at the beginning, and I think they'll be able to, and I think they're going to remember this day. And this was a big day for NATO. You know, this was a very big day. They took it. One of the gentlemen said, "You know what? We've been trying to raise money raise the rate for 30 years," he said, 20 years, from almost the beginning. And he's been there for a long time. He said, "Until you came along, it never happened. What you did is amazing." It's been sort of an amazing day for a lot of reasons, but also for that. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think they can do it without you, though, in the future? Can they do it without
Well, ask Mark.
States?
I mean, you have to ask Mark, okay? So we're heading back. We're heading back. I want to thank these two gentlemen behind me. They're incredible people, both of them. They've done a fantastic job. And Susie's in the front, and she's done great. And Monica, thank you very much. That was quite an exciting time. And we're going to be heading back. We'll be back soon, and we'll see you in Washington, D.C. Remember this, we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
All right.
Example, why, let alone two historic buildings, see, what shows up in measured inflation.
Time.
If the president's trade negotiators pursue reciprocity, which I define as both sides reducing, in a quid pro quo, reducing tariffs and trade barriers as much as possible. Ideally, in a perfect world, we would end up with two sides with zero tariffs and zero trade barriers. Would that be inflationary?
No, not at all.
That would cause the economy to roar, wouldn't it?
I think it would be.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your endorsement, Mr. Chairman, of the reconciliation bill.
Senator Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's funny, Senator Kennedy, I didn't interpret his comments that way. I would also say that, one, thank you, and we echo what Senator Reid said, thank you for your independence and doing the job. End of the day, I think tariffs are a tax, and they're going to hit. They're going to hit, I think, starting next quarter. And again, I think the reciprocity argument, that would be a nice goal. I guess I hope we can then explain to the Australians, who are a strong ally of us, who we have a free trade agreement, so we don't have tariffs, who we have a trade surplus with, who I'm hoping we're going to be able to build jointly submarines, why they, with all those things, still got whacked with a 10% tariff. Doesn't seem rational or logical to me. But let me get to, I've been very concerned about some of the Trump administration's, I think, mismanagement of the federal workforce. I can tell you some of the DOGE approach in the national security and intel world. Cuts are having dramatic effects. But today I want to mention something that, frankly, doesn't get a lot of attention, a very small entity, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. U.S. economic data, which has always been independent, it's really been viewed as the gold standard across the globe. And frankly, the BLS data often is the guidepost that investors use regularly. BLS helps us get information about cost of living increases, policy making for you guys. It's used to adjust payments on the roughly $2 trillion in Treasury bonds. The truth is that the BLS data shouldn't be degraded on any basis. Yet, the administration is so dramatically, and I hope my Republican colleagues will hear on this, cut back the staffing at BLS, that the BLS has had to significantly cut back on the collection of critical price and inflation data. Normally, BLS staff, when you don't have all the data collected, will estimate about 10% of the inputs into the CPI. Now, with these cutbacks, they've had to estimate close to 30% of the data. That means faultier data. How can we grapple with this, and what does the undermining and staffing shortages at a BLS mean in terms of your ability at the Fed to do your job?
You know, we can still do our job. I would not want anyone to think that the data have deteriorated to a point where it's difficult for us to understand the economy as well as we can understand it, which is not perfectly. But the direction of travel is concerning. You know, the U.S. has been a leader globally in investing in how to measure the output of a modern economy, which is something that we've led the world in for a long time. And it really helps not just policymakers, but also businesses if we have accurate information about what's going on in the economy. You're making decisions based on that economy, not just the Fed, not just you, but private companies as well. So I think it's I think it's something we should continue to invest in. And I don't like to see any deterioration in the public data, which has been the gold standard. The BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, and others have really been the bedrock that people really do look to as solid data that tell us what's
and these happening people in the economy. who do collect this input, who do some of this analysis, they are experts. They are not fungible. You fired one and hire another. I mean, there's an expertise here that has been, I think, being undermined. And again, you just look at the fact that if you have to do your estimates, move it from about 10% estimate to a 30% estimate, that is not good for the markets. Let me move to one other topic in my last minute. Stress tests, really important. Those of us who are involved in Dodd-Frank, really important as we try to particularly think about the most significant banks. But there has been concern, I've shared some of this concern, that the stress test process was so opaque that while the regulators may fully have understood, sometimes the very banks being regulated didn't understand fully the criteria. I know you're taking a look at how we can bring more transparency to the process. When do you think we'll see that, and what kind of changes do you think we'll make?
Well, later this year, we've said that we're going to, fully disclose the models, and that's the main thing. If you're going to set, it's like the IRS. If you're going to charge people taxes, you have to have the transparency about what that is. It's going to be the same as that. We're going to show how the calculations are made, and we're working on all that right now. We're also going to, we have a proposal out to sort of smooth the results of the test from year to year. So this is something we're working on hard and expect to have important progress later this year when we begin to publish the models.
I'm anxious to see it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Ricketts. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we were talking about tariffs a little bit earlier, the senator from Virginia talked about Australia. I will point out that Australia has, we bought about $28 billion worth of Australian beef, and they've bought exactly zero of ours. So there's an opportunity to be able to improve that trade relationship. So that's one of the things I hope will come out of the trade negotiations.
You will acknowledge there is, though, we actually have a trade surplus.
We actually have a trade surplus with Australia, that is correct, but we'd like to sell more beef to them. So that's an opportunity. But one quick question on that, kind of just following up on Senator Kennedy's line of questioning. So if a tariff was put in place and the prices went up, wouldn't that be a one-time event, right? Because after that, it would be baked in. It's just a one-time thing.
So it might well be, as I indicated in my opening remarks, it might well be a one-time event, but that isn't a law of nature. You know, we would want to make sure of that. We were more sure of that back in 2018 because we'd had 40 years of low inflation. Coming off of a global inflation episode where we haven't fully returned to 2%, it's something that's a question we will approach carefully.
But if the tariff is only put in once and just maintains the flat rate there, then how could that be inflationary in the second year?
Well, because it could be a process of many years. I mean, that's a couple of things are. One is if it comes in quickly and it's over and done, then yes, very likely it's a one-time thing, like an oil shock, a one-time oil shock where the price comes back down, it goes through the system. It doesn't raise inflation, just raises prices once. But if you have a process that goes on multiple shocks for years, for example, or if the shocks are very large, that kind of thing. And I think, again, we have to be conscious of the current situation, which is people haven't seen 2% flat inflation for some years now, and it's different from what it was in 2018 when we had tariffs earlier, when we actually cut rates. So I'm not saying we're not reacting at all of this. It's a risk we feel like as the people who are supposed to keep stable prices for the benefit of the American people, we need to manage that risk too. That's all we're doing. We're not deciding what to do yet.
So if Senator Warner's comment that a tariff is a tax, would that imply that then taxes could be inflationary as well?
No.
So what's the difference between a tax and a tariff then? Or do you disagree with Senator Warner's characterization that tariffs are not taxes?
I wouldn't disagree with that, but it's not the language I use. Look, this is, as I say, one time could be the base case, but in a situation like this where the process could go on for a long time, where the effects could be large or small, it's just something you want to approach carefully in a world where inflation is not back to 2%. And that's our job. If we make a mistake here, people will pay the cost for a long time. And so we're just approaching the question carefully. That's all we're doing. You know that, a majority of my committee has said that they do expect to cut rates between now and the end of the year in the remaining 4 meetings. So it's not that we're, taking a strong view that it will be inflation and not a one-time cost increase. It's just that we're going to take a careful approach to that very critical question.
Well, let me switch gears on you a little bit. Communist China is our single greatest threat to America's national security and financial independence. Now more than ever, the U.S. must ensure security of our financial system against Communist China's malign influence. And in 2022, Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee released a report identifying efforts by Communist China operatives to infiltrate the Federal Reserve System. The report contained real-life examples of Communist China's attempts and tactics used to target Federal Reserve officials. In late January, a former senior advisor to the Federal Reserve was arrested on charges that he conspired to steal Federal Reserve trade secrets to benefit and advance Communist China's interests. This Wall Street Journal article from May 2025 details the potential ramifications of his actions. The kind of data and trade secrets that this Federal Reserve employee shared could allow Communist China to manipulate the U.S. market and gain advanced knowledge of changes to the federal funds rate. It could provide Communist China with an advantage when selling or buying U.S. bonds and securities. Chairman, has the Fed Reserve made any changes to strengthen its internal counterintelligence and security protocols since the development of these incidents?
So that's an incident, and I would say we take it very seriously. We have quite elaborate and serious and strict provisions around staff access to information, serious protections for confidential information. We have background checks. We have annual training. We have many of those things. I don't know that we've made any fundamental changes, but we're certainly, sorry, very sorry to see something like this having taken place. We're certainly looking at the protections we have in place.
Great. Well, I have another question, and we'll just submit as a QFR, but I know the chairman said you've got a heart out, so I'll go ahead and yield back my time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Chairman Powell. Good to see you. I want to start by acknowledging the continued uptake of the FedNow real payment system. I know I've raised the development and rollout of that system with you in many, many hearings over many years. We're now about 2 years after launch. I want to continue to work with you and your colleagues to encourage expanded adoption of the capability and capacity so that customers have real-time access to their money. So I just ask that we continue to work on that together. You agree?
I do.
I thought you might. Thank you. So I want to ask you about the student loan situation in the country. And you've talked about this in the past, and you've talked about how it can be a drag on the economy, especially when it gets to be very high in terms of balances that cannot be paid. According to the New York Fed, student loan balances grew by $16 billion to reach $1.63 trillion in the first quarter of this year. Data shows an uptick in the student loan delinquency rate overall, the age of delinquent borrowers, and the number of newly delinquent borrowers. The Department of Education, meanwhile, restarted debt collection activities last month, and starting in July, nearly 2 million borrowers could see their wages being garnished. Meanwhile, here in the Senate, President Trump and Republican senators are working to pass this piece of legislation that would limit affordable loan repayment options and make it harder for borrowers to responsibly repay their debt and get back on a path toward financial health. So, Mr. Chairman, you said before in your testimonies that student loan debt can negatively impact borrowers' ability to fully participate in our economy, and that it can weigh down on the economy overall. Is that still your view?
Yes, it is.
And could you just share your...
Student loans, not really our department, but I get it. So, fam, welcome. We've been live for a little bit over an hour, and first thing that we listened, of course, that was Donald J. Trump. That was pretty spectacular, man. Like, he's a show, one-man show, honestly. Wow, that was fantastic. At NATO, he's coming back to the U.S. now. And Zelensky, there you go, live. He spoke with Trump. So one of the reasons that we see the price of XRP, one of the reasons that we see the price of Bitcoin going up right now, I think it's a question that a lot of people are asking me is, the reason is because now we are in a different type of world now that, well, Iran is not posing a threat to Israel, to the United States, at least. There's still a bunch of problems. There's still a bunch of things that we haven't solved. Wars and, in our case, ETFs, in our case, the SEC, FOMC, right? There's many things that we're waiting for, right? But it's okay. We got to be patient. We got to be buying the dip. It helps to buy the dip, right? 220 right now. We had a 190 XRP on Saturday. 190 XRP on Saturday, guys. So just FYI, comes to show that if you are paying attention, right? If you are doing this carefully every single day, it does help out, because some people might just be buying once a week or checking prices once a week. And if you did that on Saturday, you might be like, no, it might come down low, but now you'll see the price go much higher. So it's good. Also want to remind you guys to join me on BTCC. There's my moderators and also the links down there. So think about it, right? We have some positions in and we are bullish. We know that things can be better. Things can get better. Right now we're listening to Jerome Powell. He's not really speaking much about what we want to listen, which is confrontation about cutting the rate. He said, we heard him say that Powell is a very stupid person. So obviously ignoring everything that Trump says, it happens, right? And I made a video yesterday telling you, why wouldn't you cut rates now that you see that inflation is down, right? But you did right before Biden ended his term. So, yeah, I think we can go on and on and on and on. And he already has responded many times that the reason why he's not doing it is because of the new tariffs that are going to be coming in. So, guys, we have right now, I think they still continue with loans.
So I appreciate your.
Yeah, I mean, right now we're waiting really on Q3 for the tariffs. We're waiting next month for China tariffs and also the pause, the 90-day pause.
As you know, what always vexes me and has for the last 4.5 years about the Federal Reserve is the bank supervision function as opposed to the monetary policy function. So I'm going to focus on bank supervision. First of all, I do want to thank you and Vice Chair Mickey Bowman for ensuring reputation risk has been removed from the bank supervision process. It was very arbitrarily used by those who were supervising. On January 27th, 2023, I'd call it the high watermark for Operation Choke Point 2.0. The Federal Reserve Board, in coordination with President Biden's White House, executed a coordinated attack to isolate the digital asset industry from the banking system. And while the Fed has taken steps to adopt a more balanced approach to digital assets, which I appreciate, the legacy of January 27th, 2023 remains with us today. So I'd like you to look at this quote. It says, issuing tokens on open, public, and/or decentralized networks or similar systems is highly likely to be inconsistent with safe and sound banking practices. So my first question is, do you recognize this quote?
Yes, not super clearly, but yes, I do.
Because it's from the Federal Reserve Board's policy statement on Section 913 of the Federal Reserve Act, which was formally adopted by the board on January 27th, 23. So now, Chairman Powell, I want to show you another statement, and I'm sorry if you can't see it clearly, I'll read it to you. It's from the Genius Act, which just passed the Senate by a vote of 68-30 last week. And it takes the opposite position to the board's policy statement on issuing stablecoins on an open, public, distributed ledger. So my question is, what has changed about the risk of stablecoins since the board adopted its policy in 2023? And now that the Congress has weighed in, at least the Senate has weighed in and sent the Genius Act to the House, does the board plan to withdraw the policy statement on Section 913?
So I think what has changed is, if you go back, that's a couple of years ago, that was the period of high-profile failures and fraud and that kind of thing. And what's happened is, I think, the industry is maturing, our understanding of it is improving, and in a sense, it's becoming much more mainstream. So all of us are revisiting, the things that were done during that era, and I think the current view is that, that it's appropriate for. It's always been appropriate for banks to choose their customers and to be able to undertake activities as long as they're safe and sound. In terms of, I think I have to get back to you on 913. I think it's a broader thing that has nothing to do with crypto, but that was a piece of it. We are looking at and withdrawing many of our pieces of crypto guidance from that era, though, as you know.
And I appreciate that. I hope that by withdrawing the guidance that you're also instructing and admonishing your bank's supervisors to when there are efforts to regulate banks that provide too much discretion to bank regulators to pick winners and losers from among the customer lists, the loan portfolios of banks. It's antithetical to the American system of banking. And I do think that there was that kind of discretion unleashed on banks, and it had a negative impact, a real chilling impact on banks as they selected and banked certain industries and then debanked other industries and other people during the last 4 years. So taking the guidance documents and policy statements out is important, but also guiding the people that there are changes now and that they can no longer use their own subjective biases towards DEI and ESG and other things in supervising the banks is also a critical component of bank regulation.
I agree completely. And as you know, Vice Chair Bowman is actually a former bank supervisor, so she's very well placed to make that happen.
And I realize that she as vice chair is more directly involved in bank supervision. I hope that you will use your role to punctuate the importance of those changes within the bank supervision function at the Fed.
We're going to have to move on.
Thank you.
I'm assuming your answer is yes. Senator Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Chair Powell, and welcome to the committee. So, Chair Powell, a few months ago, you issued a warning about the trajectory of our national debt. Speaking at a New York Times event, you said the U.S. federal budget is on an unsustainable path. The debt is not only at an unsustainable level, but the path is unsustainable, and we know that we have to change that. Would you still agree that that is true?
Yes, that's the one thing that I would always say, and that my predecessors have said, and that's the kind of the only thing we say about fiscal policy.
Exactly. And I would agree with that. At a time when Americans are struggling to figure out how to afford their lives and have low confidence in the economy, to add to the deficit now, as the big, beautiful bill does, just strikes me as unsustainable. Now, I'm not asking you to moderate between Republican and Democratic policy differences on the big, beautiful bill, but would you agree that the big, beautiful bill adds to the deficit based on the data that you've seen?
I'm just not going to comment on the reconciliation.
Okay. Well, I will just point out to my colleagues that the CBO says that it adds to the deficit. The Joint Committee on Taxation says that it adds to the deficit. The Yale Budget Lab says that it adds to the deficit. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget says that it adds to the deficit. The Penn-Wharton budget model says that it adds to the deficit. And even some of my Republican colleagues, Senator Johnson, Senator Paul, say that it adds to the budget. And as Senator Johnson says, it's wrong and immoral. So I appreciate that you won't comment on any of this, but let me just ask you an economic question. Can you talk a bit about what impact a rising deficit has on our goal of lowering costs for Americans, especially in the Trump tariff environment that we are in right now?
I'm sorry.
What impact does a rising deficit have on our goal of lowering costs for Americans, particularly when we are in this Trump tariff environment, the unpredictability of that?
So I think it's likely that when markets are pricing longer-term Treasury securities, there's something baked into that in the market's thinking about interest rates. What should be the appropriate interest rate? But it's hard to unpack that with any precision. But
these are factors that have lots of interplay between one another.
Yes.
Yes. And Chair Powell, could you just comment briefly about the potential risks of stagflation, where we have slower growth and higher inflation? I know this is something that the Fed guards against, and could you just comment a bit on the risks of that and what it means for regular Americans trying to afford their lives?
So we're not seeing that now.
Yeah.
It isn't really the base case that that's what we're going to see. But of course, that's a very difficult thing because, a stagnant economy wants more stimulus, but an economy with more inflation wants less stimulus. So it puts the central bank in a hard place. We've warned of it, but it's honestly not something that we're facing or that we expect to face. But it's something we're monitoring is what's happening.
Thank you. I want to follow up on a question I asked you the last time you were before the committee. I asked about the impact of severe weather events, otherwise known as climate change, on home insurance costs. And you testified that, I think you said, if you fast forward over 10 or 15 years, there are going to be regions of the country where you can't get a mortgage because of the impact of the challenges of insurance companies just not being able to provide that. Since February, when I asked you that question, home insurance rates have continued to climb. A recent analysis about climate risk from First Street found that financial burdens from severe weather are driving up household costs and triggering increased mortgage defaults. Now, it's at about 8% now, but they project that by 2035, 30% of all foreclosure losses would be related to climate impacts, which is like pretty stunning. Now, I realize this is a complicated issue because insurance is regulated primarily at the state level, though there are exceptions. Flood insurance and terrorism insurance are exceptions. But I wonder if you would comment on this. I'm thinking a lot about what impact this has on housing costs, which is a big component of inflation, and a place where housing costs are rising higher than the general inflation rate right now.
Many things are driving up housing costs.
Yes, that's true.
It's of course mortgage rates, but it's also zoning costs and things like this for properties that are near the water. Particularly, for example, we spend some time down in Florida. Property insurance just gets more and more and more expensive, and to the point where it almost makes sense to self-insure, and that's because of just big losses. Companies are just putting that in their models, and they're charging what they need to to charge to make a return. And if they can't get that, then they'll leave that state. So that seems to be what's happening.
I know I'm out of time, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
You're always polite. So.
Minnesota
Gave her
knows.
22 seconds. Yes. Thank
That's
you,
why
ma'am.
they call me the Velvet Hammer, sir.
Yes. I didn't say that you weren't harsh as well. You was nice when you do it, like just right now. See, Senator Moreno reminded me not to give Tina a compliment in the middle of the back.
Chairman Powell, just want to make certain I understand this correctly. Control inflation and maximize employment. That's it. Two things, correct?
Yes.
So let's take one at a time. Maximize employment. Do you care if every American makes minimum wage or makes a livable wage? Is that something that factors into your thought process? In other words, we have full employment, but most Americans are on substandard wages. Does that change your calculus?
Does it change my what?
Calculus. Does it? Do you care? In other words, is it full employment is full employment? Every American has a job, but they're making minimum wage. Versus having a family-sustaining wage. Does that matter to the Federal Reserve?
It would matter to the country a lot.
I'm saying, does it matter to the Federal Reserve when you're making your decision?
Honestly, we don't really have the tools to affect that.
Right. So it doesn't factor in. Now that's different than us. The people of this country elect us to make certain that their wages are higher than inflation. And by the way, let the records show that real wages are up this year. So we've done that, not the Federal Reserve. Second piece of it is, let's talk about inflation first.
Well, we've helped control inflation, which is part of that.
We're going to jump right into the inflation conversation. There's different kinds of inflation. There's different causes. There's not witnesses to inflation. There's key actors to inflation. Would you agree?
Sure.
Okay. So let's talk about the actors. Did you comment during COVID lockdowns that was a bad idea, meaning that you're shutting down the entire economy? It's not a button. I hit the button, you can hear me. It's on and off. COVID wasn't that. We just shut down the economy. Any comments on that?
Of course not.
Okay, so you didn't comment on that. Vaccine mandates, something that my Democrat colleagues loved. If you don't get the vaccine, you're a terrible human being. You can't go to work. In fact, Joe Biden was overruled by the Supreme Court because he said that if you work in a company with more than 100 employees and you don't get vaccinated, the company has the ability to fire you, unless you prove that you're negative on COVID. That obviously is a supply chain shock, wouldn't you agree? If I'm running an assembly line and now I have to put my people 6 feet apart and now I have people quitting or not coming to work or I have to fire them, that's a supply chain shock, wouldn't you agree?
I mean, it's a medical thing that you
No, but it's a supply chain shock.
George Washington.
I'm not asking you to make a medical decision. I'm asking you to make a Fed decision on inflation.
Way outside anything we would comment.
But it affects inflation because supply.
It didn't. In fact,
Are you saying that supply chain shocks don't affect inflation?
They do, but that
okay, they do.
didn't.
So that's clearly one. If you ban the export of liquid natural gas, which is going to cause the commodity price to go up, would that supply shock not also cause inflation?
Potentially could.
Yeah. So, and now the ranking member loves to talk about billionaire corporations, that are going to get away with paying taxes, right? Who pays corporate taxes? Like, who pays it? Is it like some obscure Wizard of Oz character behind the curtain that is a corporate entity that pays taxes. Who pays taxes?
I mean, ultimately, it's shareholders and customers.
So it'd be, I'm going to read you a line. You tell me this is accurate. On taxes, it's not possible to know in advance precisely how the costs will be shared for taxes. I added
Correct.
that.
I would
But
agree.
it is highly likely that consumers will pay a meaningful share. Meaning if the ranking member has her way, let's just tax corporations at 100%. Why not? Be fantastic, right? Oh, nobody would want to start a company, but that aside, that cost would be added to consumer products, correct?
A tax or a tariff? What are you talking about now?
If the income tax for American corporations goes up, they will share that tax burden with their consumers. True or false?
Yeah, ultimately.
Yeah. So then taxes do raise inflation, but you don't comment on.
I mean, they haven't.
And
though.
you don't.
That's
but
just
you don't.
not true. I mean,
I got
empirically, it's not true.
The chairman's going to beat me up in 56 seconds. So, but you sent me a very nice letter, which I appreciate. And it says the Federal Reserve plays no role in commenting on trade policy. So you don't comment on supply shocks. You don't comment on tax policy, which clearly affects inflation. You don't comment on demand pull. You just said now that we should forgive student debt. Why is a person that goes to Harvard, that gets a gender studies major, pays Harvard obscene amounts of money because professors are grossly overpaid there, is that person better than a working class Ohioan that is a plumber but can't afford a car because interest rates are too high and car prices have gone up? Why don't we forgive that person's car loan instead of forgiving their student loan? But you don't comment on that. You comment on tariffs. So I'm going to just show you.
I don't comment on tariffs at all, actually. I comment on
only
inflation.
commented on tariffs. You've
I'm
only
not commenting on the
tariffs.
wisdom of tariffs.
The chairman's over there in the conversation. I'm going to show you a chart here. This is car prices.
I'm paying attention, however.
This is car prices since this year. Come on. Car prices are down. Car prices are down. Inflation in America is down. We got elected by millions of voters. You got elected by one person. He doesn't want you to be in that job. And you are costing this government $400 billion a year by refusing to lower interest rates. Nobody in this chamber has that kind of power to have a $400 billion impact on this economy, on our deficit. And I just think that you should consider whether you're really looking at this from a fiscal lens or a political lens, because you just don't like tariffs.
Senator Warnock is next.
Thank you, Chair Scott. Thank you, Chair Scott, and thank you, Chair Powell. Good to see you. The United States national debt currently exceeds $36 trillion. Last year, we paid nearly $1 trillion in interest on the debt alone, more than the federal government spent on educating and feeding our children. Chair Powell, how does the Fed consider rising national debt levels during discussions about adjusting interest rates?
We really don't. We take fiscal policy as completely exogenous, and we look at the data that's coming in, but we don't. We're never going to take into account budget deficits and things like that.
Well, here is my concern. Maybe Congress should be thinking about it. The world is losing faith in America's ability to repay our debt. We have seen a sell-off in the bond market. The United States dollar has lost more than 10% of its value against the euro and pound, and is down against nearly every single major currency in the world. Back in May, Moody's downgraded the U.S. government's credit rating because of growing debt and sinking confidence in lawmakers' willingness to address this issue. Historically, high debt pushes up interest rates, slowing economic growth and setting up a dangerous debt cycle where both interest rates and debt continue to rise. Chair Powell, how does the size and the trajectory of the national debt affect the Federal Reserve's ability to manage inflation in good economic times and spur investment and hiring in slower economic times?
I'm happy to say that today, those things do not affect our ability to do our job. The concern really is that if we don't do something, then there will come a time at which it will be a problem, not for us, but for the country. But that, at this time, it does not interfere in any way with our ability to do
that is a realistic concern in the future, given the rate of increasing debt. And it's something I'm concerned about, and maybe because it's in the future, maybe that's why, folks who have power, who sit in these jobs, aren't as concerned about it as perhaps the Congress should be. I'm concerned about it as a father of a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. I'm concerned that my Republican colleagues are planning to ram forward a bill that, according to the Congressional Budget Office, will increase the deficit by $4.2 trillion. So I want us to think about that. We're taking food out of the mouths of hungry children. This bill could cut as many as 16 million Americans off of health care. When we think about Medicaid, 71% of the Medicaid recipients in Georgia are children. So we're taking their health care, and then we're saying to these children that you'll have to deal with these trillions of dollars in debt one day. $4.2 trillion increase. Senate Republicans are trying to use a budget gimmick to claim the bill only costs a fraction of that by simply not counting things they don't want to count. If they don't like the math, they just change the formula. But the markets and those investing in our country don't care about these budget tricks. And I don't think it will help my 6-year-old and my 8-year-old when the bill comes due on this. They know the truth, and they will react based on the truth. The big ugly bill will put the United States on a disastrous fiscal path, and it will be catastrophic for our economy. Even worse, the big ugly bill is cutting people off of their health care, and for what purpose? To give tax cuts to the wealthiest. So this is an interesting moment for me, for someone who didn't know I'd end up in politics, who just paid attention to politics over the years. They're getting ready to create a whole lot of pain for a lot of people. And the question is, for what purpose? To give billionaires a tax cut. I think we ought to work together to prioritize extending tax cuts for the working class. We shouldn't be cutting their health care. We ought to save the country trillions of dollars by not giving more tax breaks to the richest Americans. And if we try to work together, we can save our economy from this disaster and still protect working families from a tax hike. I believe in tax cuts. I think working class Americans ought to give them, ought to receive them. And we ought not be burdening our children with all of this debt. With that, I yield, and the chairman should take note that the Baptist preacher is done with 3 seconds left.
And the people said amen. Okay. Senator Haggerty.
Thank you, Chairman Scott and Ranking Member Warren, for holding this meeting. And Chairman Powell, it's good to see you here again. Chairman Powell, I want to talk with you about inflationary and deflationary trends in our economy and how they impact your thinking. I understand, based on your testimony and recent statements, that you're acutely sensitive to the inflationary risks of our administration's trade policy. And though I note that it's not the Fed's responsibility to attempt to steer or to directly offset that policy in any way, I look at that, I look at your perspective, but I also look at many of the other developments in our country that I think present the opposite risk, which is a disinflation risk. And let me dig into this a bit. We're witnessing artificial intelligence adoption at breakneck speed. That's going to bring about productivity gains in nearly every aspect of our economy. We're about to pass a tax bill. That tax bill is going to encourage capital expenditures and long overdue upgrades to our manufacturing capacity, again, increasing productivity. And if you think about the concerted effort that's being undertaken by our federal government right now to reduce waste and bloated, unproductive government payrolls, all of these point to disinflationary productivity gains. So given the competing sources of uncertainty that we're talking about, it feels to me like the Fed's far more focused on tariffs and the inflationary impact of tariffs than on the deflationary impact of the points I just mentioned. So if uncertainty around tariffs is the primary reason that impacts your thoughts, man, how do you counter, how do you bring into account these disinflationary trends that I've just mentioned?
So we do look at the overall picture, and that's actually what's been happening is services inflation's been coming down, and that's been covering what we see so far, small increases in goods inflation. I would also mention a factor that you didn't mention on your list, which is regulation. which is an area which could also be over time disinflationary. So we get that. I mean, I try to say that it's the broad sweep of policies and the broader economy that matters for inflation. I get asked about tariffs a lot, and that's the one where all forecasters are expecting, a significant increase between now and the end of this year. We don't know how big it's going to be. We don't know when it's going to come, but it's just something that we're waiting to see more information on so we can make a better decision on interest rates. That's all it is.
Well, I hear the discussion about not knowing the magnitude and the timing of the trade talks and the resulting tariffs that will ensue. It does seem to me that there's a bias toward viewing this as more inflationary than deflationary. And I'd like to ask you this. If Ambassador Greer is successful at bringing the trade deals together soon and alleviating that uncertainty, what would that do to your perspective on rates? Would that put you in a position to think more aggressively about lowering rates?
Yes, potentially it would. I mean, really, it's reducing uncertainty would help, and also just what's going to be the final tariff rate and getting that settled. And I think that's the path we're on.
I think that's welcome news. I think the markets will welcome that as well, because I do believe that we're on the path, as you're about to say, of having some significant resolution in trade uncertainty. We've lived in an unbalanced world for years, where the United States has had the lowest tariff barriers in the world, and other nations have taken advantage of that. Jameson Greer and this team, Scott Bessent and his team, the president, everyone is making a concerted effort to fix this. So I'm looking forward to that. One other area I wanted to touch on, because it's touching close to home, and that is legislation that this committee has just passed out and that we've just passed in the Senate. That's to do with the Genius Act. We just passed it last week. And it provides an urgently needed regulatory framework for payment stablecoins, and it requires that they're backed one-to-one by cash or short-dated U.S. Treasuries. Over the last 5 years, the total value of outstanding stablecoins has increased from approximately $4 billion to over $2 billion today. One market participant has predicted that if a framework like the Genius Act is adopted, total issuance of dollar-pegged stablecoins could reach nearly $4 trillion by the end of the decade. So I wanted to get your perspective again, Mr. Chairman, of what impact would this new source of demand for bills have on the yield curve, and in particular, what impact would it have on short-term rates?
So more demand is going to have a tendency to drive down rates. I don't really have a sense of how big that effect would be, of course. And let me just say that it's a great thing that we're making progress toward a stablecoin framework.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I couldn't agree with you more. The direction clearly is that it's going to drive rates down. I think it's very positive for the economy, positive for our cost of borrowing as a nation. And I appreciate your response there, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. For
yes, sir. Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Powell, it's good to see you. Thank you for being here. I want to follow up on a question from Senator Warner about data deterioration. I'm concerned about that as well, that the Trump administration, I'm watching as they've ended dozens of research studies that business and government leaders rely on. So my question to you, are there specific research projects that the Bureau of Labor Statistics provided that they no longer do provide, that the Federal Reserve researchers cannot replicate on their own or through other sources?
I'm not aware of any.
Okay.
That doesn't mean they don't exist, but mainly it's the regular data they supply. And as you know, they've cut back on the size of that survey.
Right. So I would hope as we move forward, and not just in today's hearing, but if there is some other data, or you're relying on data that you're not getting, or there's now another source for that data, I would please share that with the committee. Thank you.
Yes.
During the Biden administration, the Federal Housing Finance Agency and the Federal Reserve worked together to improve access to the discount window for banks. What is the status of that collaboration with the FHFA?
I can't speak to the FHFA. I can speak to the fact that we're really looking carefully at modernizing the discount window and making.
But we're not there
investments.
yet.
No, it's going to be this is a project that will take some time. It's the discount window needs to be updated and refreshed from a technological standpoint so that people can access it readily and that kind of thing. It's still a little bit behind the age in that respect.
Do you have a time frame that you're looking at to
I'll get back to you. You know, it's
Okay.
something we've been working on hard.
Or is there a funding impediment that is also
No.
addressing this?
No,
So, okay, if you could.
We're moving
provide-
ahead with it. I'll come back to you
Okay,
on that.
thank you. In March, the Federal Reserve, together with the FDIC and OCC, announced that you all intend to repeal the 2023 Community Reinvestment Rule, Reinvestment Act proposed rule. I prefer the proposed rule as it would better address the needs of states like Nevada that don't have headquarters of large banks. How will you ensure that the new CRA guidance improves access to financial services, to loans, to investments in underserved rural and tribal communities?
So I think in March, we announced that we're putting out for comment, really, a proposal to withdraw the proposed guidance, which
Okay.
had been the subject of litigation. And in the meantime, we're going back to the old CRA rules, and I think that's where we will be. I don't have anything more in terms of what we might change with respect to those old rules, but that's where
So
we
the
are.
default are the old rules,
Yes.
and those may be.
CRA as it existed before
ongoing.
this
Yeah.
proposal, which actually never took effect.
Right, okay, that's helpful. Community banks benefited from high deposits during the pandemic. Since then, the net interest margin for community banks has fallen. What specific challenges do you see for community banks, if any?
Community banks, are very important. We want a banking system that has all different sizes and shapes of banks, and community banks are absolutely critical. They know what's going on in communities and in a way that the big banks can't possibly. So they're a critical part of our infrastructure, and I think they've been under pressure because, frankly, regulatory costs fixed costs of regulation have gone up. We try not to contribute to that. The number of banks has been going down pretty steadily, and that's not something we're trying to foster, but it's a sort of long-run trend of really the last 30 years. So we try not to add to what is a secular trend because we think they're important.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Ms. Chairwoman, I yield my time.
Who's up next? Senator Britt.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair. Chair Powell, thank you for being here with us today. I want to start just by echoing the comments of Senator Cortez Masto when it comes to community banks. Obviously believe that community banks and credit unions, financial institutions that serve everyday Americans and main streets across the great state of Alabama and our country are so critically important to people being able to actually achieve the American dream. And want to make sure, I know we've talked about this the last few times that you've been in front of us. We've talked about the rewrite of Basel III. We've talked about long-term debt. We've talked about Reg II. We talked about a ton of things and talked about my concern that no one was looking at the cumulative impact of those things and the trickle-down effect. I just want to get a commitment from you that as you are reviewing rulemaking across the board, that you will consider and make sure to make the perspective of the smallest U.S. banks and non-financial industries like the ag sector who did not maybe have a seat at the table in previous administrations, but give them a seat at the table and make sure that you're thinking about the impact on those individuals and the people they serve.
I'm happy to make that commitment.
Thank you so much, Chair Powell. I also want to talk to you about an issue that has been brought up briefly today by another colleague of mine, but that is about childcare. So when we look at the childcare crisis in this country, we know that our economy loses about $122 billion a year because of affordability and accessibility, reliability, if you will, of childcare. It is said that anyone who has a child between the ages 0 and 5 actually spends 22% of their income on childcare. We have done the studies and looked at the numbers, and 59% of stay-at-home and or part-time working parents say that they would like to re-enter the workforce, but that affordability or accessibility is an impediment to do that. As we are looking to build back America, as we are looking to create opportunity and bring those things into fruition, would you agree that taking a look and being able to address, not asking you to comment on any specific proposal, but addressing some of the shortfalls related to accessibility and affordability of childcare would have a positive long-term impact on the economy?
So I think there's quite a bit of research showing exactly that, and we really saw it during the pandemic. As I think you know and pointed out, it's not an issue that we play a role on, but clearly it would contribute, childcare would contribute to participation in the labor force by many.
Absolutely. And as Alabama looks, we look at our labor participation rate. It is 5 points lower than the national average. We continue to look to ways to get people re-engaged in the workforce and know that addressing this head on will help us be able to achieve that. So thank you so much, Chair Powell. I look forward to continuing to work to get that done. So there has been some angst vocalized about the reconciliation bill and the president's trade policies. And from my perspective, much of that skepticism is both unfair and premature. Market resiliency and recent economic data actually continues to reflect confidence in the U.S. economy. Look at the recent Treasury auction, which was notably successful and saw stronger than expected demands for 30-year bonds and stable, even slightly declining yields. To me, this demonstrates that investors still view the U.S. debt as an attractive asset, regardless of the ongoing policy discussions and debates and forging a pathway forward. And those fundamentals of the economy, actually remain quite strong. Chair Powell, would you agree that the components of our economy actually remain quite strong? And how does the Fed consider this type of strong auction performance in the context of your market expectations and monetary policy discussions?
So, as you point out, the Treasury market is working fine just now. Liquidity is adequate, and bond prices are responding to economic events, and so bond market's in good shape. In terms of the strength of the economy, I would strongly agree. The labor market's in a solid place. The economy's growing. Inflation is in a pretty good place, come much closer to 2%. So it's a very solid economy. We are watching the labor market very closely, as we always do. And a couple of things in particular. One is just a very low hiring rate, which goes with a low layoff rate. But if we were to start to see layoffs, we would see unemployment go up quickly, and so we're watching that carefully. But the labor market has remained solid, and I would agree with your overall characterization.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, ma'am. Senator Kim.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Thank you for coming before us today. You've often said in the past that when it comes to monetary policy that it works with a lag, right? That this is something that you're having to try to assess the data that's before you.
Right.
I'm thinking about this because we have the Federal Open Market Committee, FOMC 5-year review, and you were talking about tariffs and the uncertainty of this moment. So I guess I just wanted to ask you, how do you balance sort of assessing between more of the backwards-looking data that you're able to look at more tangibly in that way, but also addressing sort of forward-looking models to try to understand where things are heading?
That's really the challenge that all forecasters have, and really monetary policy needs to be forward-looking. At the same time, we need to be humble about our how hard it is to forecast. So particularly at times of high uncertainty, which I would say I would include now, you really want to look at the real data and take signal from that, and not be too brave about what your forecast might be, because it's going to be highly uncertain.
So you're saying that in times of greater uncertainty, in some ways that makes you more interested in the backwards-looking data to sort of guide you?
Well, I'd almost flip it around. Yes, but I'd almost flip it around and say at a time like that, you don't want to be giving a lot of forward guidance, and you don't want to be acting as though you have a lot of certainty about the path forward. It makes sense to move more slowly in most situations where there's more uncertainty. There are situations where it would not make sense to move slowly, but in most cases, you'd want to move more slowly.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I talked to some of my constituents back home. There's this one conversation I had that has really stuck with me, where a woman was telling me that there's so much uncertainty right now in the world and certainly in her life that she says it's hard for her to even breathe sometimes. She just feels this kind of weight upon her chest. And I've thought about that a lot, because I try to think through what can we do to try to alleviate that concern, alleviate that anxiety for people. But you can see it. I mean, right now, whether it's about what's unfolding in the Middle East and the fragility of what comes next. When I look at this reconciliation bill before us in the Senate, I do worry not just about the deficit, as some of my colleagues have mentioned, but about the potential of significant job loss that we're seeing, whether in the healthcare industry, whether in the energy industries. And certainly when it comes to tariffs, as you said, trying to think through what comes next in terms of whether deals are struck and at what levels. Are you taking into account that by sort of an issue-based level, or like are you looking at sort of the global instability in terms of the different crises that are out there? Is that factoring into how you're thinking about when we're talking about legislation here? I know you're not going to go into the policy per se, but if there's a potential for significant job disruption, is that something that you're looking into as you're forecasting?
Yes. We obviously pay great attention to global events and in an effort to understand what's going on in the economy globally, because that does matter for our economy. So we pay close attention to all of those things and track them. Ultimately, though, we're looking at the U.S. economy and what are the fundamental drivers here, and then making a judgment based on all of that. And mainly, this is a big economy, and we're geographically separated from most of the other big economies in the world. So we have a smaller external sector than most of the all the European economies, for example. So we're really looking at the U.S. and what's happening here.
I wanted to ask you because, in central banks in other countries, including Bank of England and European Central Bank, they've begun modeling the potential macroeconomic effects of artificial intelligence. They're thinking about how they can use AI to be able to do some of the forecasting, to think through what comes next. I guess I wanted to get a sense of what the Federal Reserve is thinking in terms of similar work in the AI space.
We have lots of people doing work on AI and more than that, even monitoring research that's going on everywhere in the world. And, speaking of uncertainty, it's very clear that it has the potential to make really dramatic changes in our economy, in our workplace, in the jobs of workers, in the way companies work, and all of those things. But it honestly, there's a tremendous uncertainty about the. So I think what has changed is, if you go back, that's a couple of years ago, that was the period of high-profile failures and fraud and that kind of thing. And what's happened is, I think, the industry is maturing, our understanding of it is improving, and in a sense, it's becoming much more mainstream. So all of us are revisiting, the things that were done during that era. And I think the current view is that, that it's appropriate it's always been appropriate for banks to choose their customers and to be able to undertake activities as long as they're safe and sound. In terms of, I think, I have to get back to you on 913. I think.
Senator Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair Powell, can you talk about how our interest rates compare to other first-class countries around the world?
At the higher end.
And how does that affect the United States?
Well, I think that reflects a couple things. One is just that the U.S. economy has outperformed, has been stronger than others. And I don't want to pick on any other nations, but many other nations have had much lower growth, now have lower inflation, and are, have pretty low growth, whereas the U.S. economy has really been the outstanding performer and remains that to this day. That implies somewhat higher rates.
So you say it's higher than most of first-class countries. Can you talk about historically where we've matched up with other countries?
Yeah, so let's just go back to when the pandemic hit, for example. We were we had very low rates during that era, but they were by far the highest in the developed world because the U.S. economy was the strongest. The European Union had negative rates. I think the Bank of England was at 75 basis points. I think we were at 2.4%, so we were meaningfully higher. And again, it was a time when we were our growth was higher, and their growth was lower, and their inflation was lower. Our inflation was fine, probably about the same as ours. So I think we've generally had a little bit higher rates than those countries because they have slower growth, older populations, lower productivity, those kind of things. We have the strongest economy in the world.
Globally gone up as well?
Sorry?
Have interest rates in those countries globally gone up as well?
Well, they went up.
The US?
All of those countries had their rates go up quite a bit during the global pandemic inflation, right? And as you know, many of them have been cutting their rates, and we had been too, and we'll at some point resume that. But we're 100 basis points lower than we were, I think if you take the EU and the Bank of England, they've both cut a little more than that.
How recently?
Recently, but but I think you probably read this, but they're either at or close to the end of their cutting cycles.
I know there's been a lot of talk today about deficits and the national debt, but how much does tax policy affect the economy in the U.S.?
I mean, it has big effects over time. It's really not something that drives what we do. It isn't. But I think tax policy plays over the long run a huge role in incentivizing investment, which helps growth and things like that. I think it's very, very important over the long run. Certainly more important than monetary policy.
Would a $4 trillion tax increase on middle class Americans affect the economy?
Now here we're getting into.
I want to listen, Warren.
Expected to couldn't even working people cut
necessary burdens, especially community banks. Governor Bowen have been more her to lead on reform at the Fed, and I expect you as chairman to afford her the same stature as her predecessors. I look forward to hearing from you and your testimony. Ranking Member Warren, you are now recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. When he ran for president, Donald Trump repeatedly promised to lower costs on day one. Those were his words. But since Trump became president, families have been more financially stressed than ever. Since January, consumer sentiment has plummeted. Since January, household debt and delinquencies continue to climb. Since January, workers' worries over layoffs have climbed. Since January, businesses big and small have been paralyzed by uncertainty, and they have hit the brakes on investments and hiring. The cause of these problems has been the chaos caused by one person, President Trump. Chaotic trade policies, massive cuts to families' health care coverage to fund tax giveaways to the wealthy, and wholesale deregulation of our financial system that will unleash fraudsters and con men on the middle class. First, trade. Trump continues to play his lose-lose game of red light, green light on tariffs. When this administration slaps tariffs on everything from food to clothing to electronics, working families pay the price. This is.
He's supposed to be saying something about the Fed, the guy who's in front of him. Man.
Bad for the middle class and bad for Main Street. Tariffs like these mean higher prices on essentials for consumers and small businesses, while large corporations and the wealthy find ways to shield themselves from the impact. Second, tax cuts for the wealthy. Trump's one big, beautiful bill that Republicans are jamming through Congress represents one of the largest transfers of wealth from working people to millionaires and billionaires in American history. How are Trump and Republicans paying for part of this $4 trillion in tax giveaways to billionaires? Well, by kicking 16 million people off their health care coverage, cutting food assistance for more than 2 million children, and raising monthly student loan payments for millions of borrowers just after delinquencies have skyrocketed. In addition to raising costs for lower and middle class Americans and taking money right out of their pockets, this bill will also choke economic growth. This isn't tax policy, it's economic warfare against the American people. And even when they throw 16 million people off their health care, the Republicans still can't pay for the lavish tax giveaways to billionaires. So instead of just saying that billionaires and billionaire corporations should just pay a little more in taxes, they put the costs of those billionaire tax cuts on the nation's credit card, the national debt. The Republicans plan to run up the national debt by another $4.2 trillion and expect our children and our grandchildren to pay for it. And finally, deregulation. This administration is systematically dismantling the safeguards that policymakers put in place after the 2008 financial crash to prevent Wall Street from creating another crisis. Less than 2 weeks ago, the Fed board decided to lift Wells Fargo's asset cap. You couldn't even wait until Wells managed to make it one whole year without being caught in a major financial scandal. In just the past 6 months, Wells has been caught and confessed to cheating its customers, cheating its investors, and cheating its workers, the trifecta. For the Fed to give them a gold star and tell Wells it's okay to expand the number of customers, investors, and employees that it can cheat is an outrageous giveaway to one of Wall Street's most derelict banks. And today, you will leave this hearing and go directly to a meeting where the Fed is expected to vote to lower capital requirements for JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and the other too big to fail banks. At a time when the economic data are flashing red, these short-sighted changes will increase the likelihood that these mega banks once again tank the economy and then come back here to beg Congress for bailouts when their risky bets go bust. To sum up Trump's economic agenda, it's chaos and pain for the middle class and even more profits for the powerful. American families will face higher costs and new risks to their health care and their bank accounts. Unemployment will tick up, and our economic growth will slow. And that's not just me saying this. It is exactly what the Fed's latest economic projections indicate. I hope my Republican colleagues will wake up to the chaos around us. It falls to Congress to stop Trump's trade war and kill this big, ugly bill. And Chair Powell, it falls to you and the Fed board not to pile additional risk onto Trump's existing chaos by dismantling the safeguards that protect American families from another Wall Street meltdown. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Warren. Today we'll hear from the Chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, on the semi-annual monetary policy report to Congress. Chair Powell, thank you for your testimony today, and you have 5 minutes.
Well, and he spoke, the chairman, the ranking member, Warren. It was all about anti-Trump and classic. And there's more people speaking. But fam, that's 2 hours, fam. Plus, we got like 50 minutes or so of Trump and then an hour plus of Powell. Nothing's going to happen with Powell. Nothing concrete is really saying other than I'm not going to speak on anything else other than inflation. But yeah, it's like classic Powell, right? Woo! Time for me to take a break. It was a good breakfast. And I want to say thank you to all of you. That was really nice, man. Trump speaking and the whole world moving, as you know. It's cool, man. I mean, this is what we're supposed to be doing right now. There's really, really, really not much to to get frustrated today, other than we're waiting on a few things. Cooking, the war and statement, maybe. I mean, he said that he's not looking for a statement, but it would be hearing from Iran, So, give or take, we're doing much better this week, early this week. We still have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the weekend. So, why did we go from 222 to 217 immediately? Well, people taking profits. We'll see how we can retain that level of consolidation after we went up, right? Look at this. So XRP, could you just hold the line and then help us get much higher? That will be really good, right? So we go back all the way to $2, then why, right? So not the United States, it doesn't really want to get involved in this. It's not going to go to war with Iran. It was just a strike. So I don't really see anything else out there affecting prices in a very, very big way. Only that next month, get ready for more tariff conversations. But hopefully, it's going to be, fine for the markets. Thanks for coming in, guys. JB in the house, TJ in the house. Thank you so much. And goes to, appreciate you guys for stopping by. Oscar Ramos Live, 2 hour plus. Special one for the FOMC, for in this case Jerome Powell and Trump, And I'll see you next time with more updates and info. Peace. Let's go. Links down below, guys. Join us. We'll continue trading. Bye.